So we've just done the chassis in the previous video, and in this next one we're going to be unwrapping the next two big parts of the body. First up's this big cabin here. It shouldn't be too difficult since it doesn't have that many details attached to it, and we should be able to quite quickly unwrap this thing. So I'm just going to select pretty much every face in there by using Control A, and then using the flatten with, of course, turning off the normalize function. Now you can see quite a few big parts. There are a few small ones in there, but it shouldn't be too hard to manage this. Now this roof is going to be one of the biggest parts. I'll put that one in the center and then sort of place the others around it. So I'm trying to figure out what this part is. Let's see, I think it's on the other side. Yeah, it's something like that. So I will have to rotate this a little bit to get it to match. So a 90-degree rotation, it should sit somewhere over there. Now it has attached these things together, and because there are hard edge there, we want these to be split up in the normal maps. But that might be something we're going to get to later. Right now I just want to lay them out in a way that's easy to identify. So these two parts can fit here. And then we're going to select the door to make sure I've selected all the polygons on the front, and use their grow to select all of them. And once I've selected that, I'm just going to do a planar map on this because I don't think the flatten is going to do a good job with that. So just using planar map. So there we go, that's our planar map. Rotate it 180 degrees though. The next up is going to be this front panel here. Just going to move that around like so. And let's see, grab those, rotate them like that. And this piece is in between there, so we're just going to place it. Well, first I need the one that sits in the front, and then I can do the one that sits at the bottom. So I need both of these. I'm going to grab this piece here. I need to detach it from that other one on the side. So hit Control D to detach it, and then rotate it to bring it to the correct position. Now we're going to place this part at the back. And just in general, I think this piece here is probably the easiest part of the entire bulldozer to unwrap. And I have to make sure to align the planar map correctly. And I have to make sure to select every single polygon. So with that done, I'm going to place that one in the correct position. I'm using a planar one on this one. That's a bit, I don't think there's any point in really splitting it up too much. The curves are so soft that I think I can get away with having them all in the same smoothing group and thus having them as the same UV island. So I think I can just barely not fit it in there. So I'm trying to figure out what I'll do with it. This one sits at the bottom. Because these pieces are so big, and because they're really the start of the UV layout, I'm quite free to do with them as I want. So trying to think the layout out a bit so that it doesn't become too difficult later on. So again, I'm going to do a planar map with this piece here. Place it about there. And when working like this, it can also help to turn on use angle selection because it's easier to select the big faces then. So these top parts are going to sit somewhere over here. Then this entire bottom area. I don't want to keep it as one long stretch because that's going to be too hard to fit in. If I just select these as a separate piece and move them around. So these are apparently still attached to something. So I have to make sure I grab those as well. That should be a good spot for these things. So I just keep puzzling with these pieces. It's nothing, especially for this part, it's nothing too complex. You're really quite free in what you do with them. Just try to keep in mind that if you need to have a hard smoothing group in there for baking 3D Studio Max, which means large angles which are, I'd say, more than 45 degrees, then, and even more than 30 degrees, you'd probably want to do it, then it's best to try and get a split in your UVs there as well. And the whole reason we're doing it like this is, well, you might end up with a few more UV seams than you want, but at least we're going to be sure that in an engine like Unreal, your normal maps are going to look more correct. It won't be 100% correct, but if you just use the single smoothing group for everything method, then it's only going to look correct when you render with the scanline, which obviously is not the correct method of displaying game art. We want it to look correct in engines, so we want to make sure that we're giving the baker as little of a hard time as possible. And just simply because as it stands, there is no way to bake something correctly for UDK, Unreal, which is what we're going to be putting this bulldozer in somewhere in the future. So, got the main part done. Next up are going to be these covers for the tracks on the side. They're a little bit more complex. They have a few more pieces. Nothing too crazy though. So, just selecting this side part here. Apparently, it's unwrapped a bit weirdly, so I'm going to unfold it. And then obviously, I need to make sure that I'm aligning this correctly. I'm going to have to detach this part, stitch it in, then do some welding, because apparently it's splitting up some pieces here and there. Okay, so with that done, we can place this one over here. That should be about the correct position. And the underside should also sit approximately in the right position. And then we have these sort of support beam parts on the underside. Trying to unwrap these piece by piece by using Unfold. Unfold does a relatively okay job at them, but it is again splitting them up for strange reasons. So once these are aligned, I'm going to place them like that. Should be good to work with. Now this piece here, nothing too complex, it's just a few unfolds I did on them. This one here, I'm just going to do another unfold. And oh god, it's split up a lot again, so making use of the weld and detaching these little pieces here. Selecting one of the edges and using the Align from Text Tools. That's the back side, so I can scale it down a lot. Doesn't really matter, you will never see it, but I have to create it just keep things a bit clean. Okay, so then we're going to do the inside here. The inside again, just a simple unfold should work. I am going to try and detach this part and stitch it in a slightly more logical location where it makes a bit more sense to stitch it in. Rotate this, place it somewhere over there, and I think I might go and put that one down here. And rotating this one in such a way it makes it a little bit easier to work with. We can fit that one in over there. And we've got this handle here. I'm going to try and let's see where we can get rid of that one. Somewhere over there. Most pieces are done. And again, we're skipping a little bit ahead here, not showing every single unwrap and puzzling because a lot of it is just the same all the time. We do have a hole here, and I'm going to try and fill that hole up a little bit with a few separate pieces. Again, that piece that I scaled down there was the back side of a certain element. So that means I can get away with scaling it down a little bit. So it looks like this area, we've made it a little bit more compact, which is definitely easier to pack. I'm going to stitch those in over there because it makes it slightly more compact and easier to puzzle in. We can fit that one down below. And let's see what we can do with this stuff somewhere over there. Alright, that looks like a decent layout. Now, we've got these separate pieces all unwrapped. We've got three main ones done. We've got the track covers, the chassis, and the cabin. And we're going to start our UV layout by grouping these together a little bit. The first thing I'm doing is for the symmetrical track covers, the left and the right. The actual top of them is different in terms of ambient occlusion. The cabin has a different shape and it's overlapping there, so we have to make this a little bit different. And what's also different is the side of the track covers is going to have some text on it, and of course we want to make sure that the text isn't mirrored there. I mean, it's a bit silly we have mirrored text there, so I'm just going to spend a little bit more UV space on that. So move that in there. Place that one down over there. I'm just going to split this part off and put it down there. Now this area here, I'm going to try and place it somewhere else. Just trying to get things to sit together a little bit more compact to not waste so much space. So we've got the front of the chassis here, which we can place over there. And again, these parts that I'm unwrapping are all the really the most important surfaces of the bulldozer. These are really the biggest ones, which are going to be using the most UV space. So they should definitely get some decent screen area, texture area on the texture that we're going to be creating. So again, for a few of these pieces, I'm unwrapping them in a non-overlap, non-symmetrical way, because for things like the hood and areas that will have text, I really don't like mirroring for obvious reasons. So this sits at the top, so we're going to place it there. Makes it easier to align things. Then move that in a bit closer. And I really want to align these in a logical way, so I'm going to make one long stretch where all these things are aligned like they'd be laid out in if you'd follow them open in real life. We can fit these things in between and then slightly move them out so we get a little bit more place to play. The underside, not the most important part, so we've scaled that down a little bit. I'm just going to move it out. I'll see what I do with it. I might not use it straight away, but these are all pieces of the inside, and I'm breaking them apart, creating some more seams, but that really isn't a problem because they become easier to stack. Something like this. Yeah, we create a compact shape here. So that's most of the stuff on the underside, which is not very important, so we'll see where we stack that later. I might scale it down a bit more. Then this is the whole side of the chassis, quite important actually. Trying to see, is it overlapping? No, it looks about right. We can move this closer. We just get that one piece out and relocate it. And we've got the back area here. And don't really want that to be symmetrical or it's going to be too obvious. So again, I'm just detaching that, mirroring it. I think this could nicely fit in here because it's approximately the location where it sits on the actual model. Then we only have a few more pieces to puzzle in there. This thing is the underside of the back of the chassis. Nothing too important, so I can create a few more seams, detach some parts. Sometimes you forget what a part is, so just check again on your model. And if they're hard to puzzle and they're not really important areas, you can just get away with scaling them down or breaking them apart a bit more. There we are. And this little area here, I'm just going to make this shape a little bit easier to work with by scaling it down slightly. You're never going to notice, and it makes it less of an annoying piece to work with. Then we've got this little area here, which is the side. I'm going to place that down there. Now we still got the underside, And like I said, not very important, so I'm going to scale it down to like half or a quarter of the size even. Should be fine. Okay, so for our initial layout, this is already quite compact, nothing sticking out too much. I'm going to collapse all of it just to save it down for to be safe. And just do it on every single one of them. Also on the symmetry, you just want to, collapse it down. There we are, and that should be it for the initial UV layout.